Some are like, we all got something to do for God. Number one, I will protect the unity of this church. How? By acting in love towards other members, not gossiping, by refusing to gossip.
Hi guys, today we are going to be making dinner, and I'm going to make the viral, I think it's technically feta and tomato pasta, but I'm actually going to be using a different cheese. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to talk in this one. I think I'm going to do a voiceover. So enjoy the music, enjoy my voice. Let's go. Okay, you guys, so these are the ingredients that I'm using: tomatoes, spinach, onions, and then also I have some seasonings: pepper, garlic and herb, and pink Himalayan salt. Also not shown here is the garlic that's in the fridge, and I also seasoned with red peppers. The nice thing about this recipe is it just is one pan and one pot. And then I also use the Boursin garlic and fine herb cheese, Parmesan, and some shell pasta. Here I am just taking the tomatoes off of the vines, and then I'll actually go and wash them. And then I cut the onion. I kind of cut it in large, I diced it in large pieces just because I didn't want to cut them into tiny pieces. Usually what they show you in the recipe for this is just essentially like cutting it in half and putting it directly in there like that. I like to just dice it up a little bit. It makes it easier for eating later. Okay, so now I am putting the cheese in the pan, and then what I'll do is I'll take my washed tomatoes and I'll put them in the pan as well. As you see soon, I am mixing the two tomatoes just for color purposes. They're the same tomatoes. One is just more orange and one is more red. So I just wanted to mix those up a little bit more, especially because the bigger ones would get more saucy, I guess. And I wanted to make sure that was evenly distributed throughout the pan. Now I'm just adding those chopped onions into the pan, kind of trying to get those distributed evenly throughout, just so then those flavors seep throughout all of the sauce as well. Onions have a lot of high water content, so I like to put a good amount of those in here just because then it adds that much more sauce to the actual overall dish. Now I'm adding the garlic. I add a good amount of garlic in there. It gets nice and like roasted and soft to where once it's done cooking, you can kind of smash it. Oh, hey Bean, how you doing, girl? She's so nosy. But I like putting the garlic in there as big cloves. Now I'm just seasoning it with the salt, pepper, garlic, and herb. And then also I'll add some red peppers in here. I don't do too much red peppers in this part because my nephew also eats this and I don't want to make it too spicy for him. But at the end, I definitely will finish with a good amount of red peppers. And here is the finished product. Well, the uncooked finished product. I'm just gonna put it in the oven. It bakes for 30 minutes and then we'll grab it out and see how it looks. Okay, so now the water is boiling and I did go ahead and add a good amount of salt to the water when it was boiling. This helps to distribute
or dissolve the salt once the water's hot. So I did do that, and then while that's boiling and cooking, I just shredded all of the Parmesan. I like to do the whole thing. But while all this is cooking, I wanted to give y'all my thoughts on my devotion.
Okay, so I figured while we are waiting for the food to get done, I would tell you what kind of stood out to me today in my devotional. As I told you guys, me and my ladies are doing a reading the Bible in a year, and part of that is obviously we're reading the first book right now in the Old Testament, and then also we're reading Matthew in the New Testament, which is the first book. But what caught my eye today is we're reading about Joseph. The part where we're at is he is in Potiphar's house. Well, he's actually in jail. He's in prison because Potiphar's wife tried to make a pass at him and he didn't go for it. She got mad and said that he did. And what really happened was she pulled and tugged at his robe, was trying to get him to make a pass at her, and he said no and ran out right away, leaving his robe, which she was grabbing onto. So therefore it looked like he made a pass at her and blah blah blah. So he's in jail, and there are two guys that have dreams. There's a butler and a baker, and he interprets those dreams for them. One of them is a good story, one of them does not end up well. He interprets that correctly, and that person ends up, and then Potiphar has a dream, and no one in the land can, interpret it for him. And the butler remembers, oh, actually a guy in prison interpreted my dream for me. I'll just have him come. And so he interprets the dream for him, and he gains the trust of Potiphar again. And he becomes like head of, he essentially is like what it seems like second in command. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. And the verse that caught my eye was Genesis, I believe it's 41, verse 52, where he says, God has caused me to be fruitful in my affliction. Fruitful in my affliction. That woke me up this morning, because it was such like my goodness, we have no idea what God's doing in the midst of the chaos, in the midst of the hardships, in the midst of our affliction, as Joseph says. Like, we really have no idea what God's up to. And in the moment where he seems like the butler forgot him, because he told the butler, hey, when you go back into Potiphar's house, tell him about me. Tell him I interpreted your dream correctly, and the butler actually forgot. And years passed, and he goes, oh my God, I was supposed to tell you about this guy, And it was on God's timing, because in that time, he interpreted what Potiphar needed and actually saved the people of Egypt and his own family later on in the story by getting them prepared for a famine that would last 7 years. And I just was so reminded that, first off, God is good all the time, and his timing is the perfect timing. He knows no time, and so therefore when it is the thing to do, he does it. When it is God's will, he does it. And I just am so reminded that we have no idea sometimes what God is doing, but he does. And we just have to trust him, even in those times where it feels like everything is going wrong, everything is not right. We're being, unjustly accused of things. We're being, treated wrong. He is right there for us, and he is the one that is doing all things and working all things out for the good of those that love him. And so, perfect timing. The oven just went off. We're gonna check on the food, and we'll be right back.
It looks like the pasta is cooking nicely. I'm taking the sauce out of the oven. It's been in for about 30 minutes now. And what I'll be doing is adding in the spinach. I put in a good amount of spinach, and what you'll see me do in a moment is you'll see me kind of smashing down the spinach into the pan pretty much just trying to make sure it's not going to fly away or get too burnt. We want it in kind of some of the sauce so then it wilts away nicely. Um, and so then I'll end up putting it back in the oven for 5 minutes. And I do cover this for the full 5 minutes, and then we'll check on it again in a moment. It looks like the pasta is done cooking. I do check with my finger, and if it breaks a little easy, then I know it's ready to go, and it's pretty much al dente. I keep wanting to say al dente. Who is he? We don't know.
I just thought that that was something that I guess I just haven't read before. And well, I've read it, but it just hasn't stuck out to me like that. And maybe this is a different version that I typically read, but I just was so like, yes, God, you work all things out for the good of those that love you and are called, you know, and that is so encouraging to me. But what I will say is also throughout that time, Joseph was preparing himself for God's blessing, you know, like he kept himself pure during that time when Potiphar's wife was trying to, you know, make a pass at him. He kept himself, and that wasn't the first time. She had done it multiple times, and he kept himself pure in that time. And he just was diligent even when he was in, you know, jail. Like he didn't make a scene, he didn't fight it, you know what I'm saying? He just did his time that was told, you know, that was given to him. And he did what he felt the Lord called him to do. He must have still been close to God in order for him to be able to interpret those dreams. He had to still be sensitive to God's, you know, to God's voice in order for him to be able to interpret those dreams that were God-given dreams. That was all purposeful. But Joseph did his part in remaining close and steadfast to God and keeping, you know, God's laws and commandments and all of those different things. Like Joseph did what he needed to do to please God. And with that, God was able to release those blessings onto Joseph's life. You know what I'm saying? Like God's will would have been done no matter what, but the blessing is when we're obedient and God can say, okay, now I can give you this. Now I can trust you with this. And even more so, I'm going to do above and beyond all that you can ask or think. And that's the part where sometimes I feel like I can really step up, you know, or I can really just remain consistent and fervent in his word and in his, you know, in his rules and the things that he's calling me to do. I have to be consistent in those things. And with that, God can entrust more to me. And even though I have desires, God can do so much more than what I desire. You know, his word says he will give you those desires, but he also does above and beyond all that we can ask or think. And so I know that with obedience and with trusting him and with remaining close to him and being able to still hear his voice and do those things, that he can bring fruitfulness into our affliction. And so I hope that helps someone today. I hope that that is something that encourages you to continue moving forward, to continue doing the things that you're doing. And we're not doing things because we want to get blessed by God. We're doing things because we love him, because it's his word, because he commands us to do things. And when we became a child of God, we said, I'm putting away all my fleshly desires and I'm walking into what you want for my life and what your will is for my life and what your desires are for me. And so with that, our obedience is because we love him and because we are bought with a price and because we have given ourselves to him in that way, you know? So I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna check on this food and I'm gonna preheat the air fryer so then we can put some garlic bread in there. All right, let's go.
So the 5 minutes are up and I'm just going to mix in the spinach with the sauce and you'll see that it creates a good like pink, it's a beautiful sauce. It's really yummy. And then what I'll end up doing is I will actually add more spinach. I'll just use the rest that I have here. And that will go in the oven for another 5 minutes. This is all at 375. The food is done and it looks delicious. So I'm just going to show you how I plate it. So as you can see, we added the Parmesan cheese, the red pepper flakes, and then some raw onions. I love raw onions, so I add them every chance I get. But this is such a family favorite and really simple to make, as you can see. Anyway, thank you for joining me on today's vlog. I had a lot of fun making food, and we'll see you next time.